Goals to talk about.
Yeah, great match to call last night. I'm still with the adrenaline of the quick trip to Kansas, but back to St. Louis.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know how you pull it off sometimes.
But I'm here.
All right, so let me get one more thing going here. Okay. All right, so Santi, I've got our show notes a little bit different this morning, so I think we're going to just dive right into the goals and
All
the
right,
the match flow, and then we'll talk about the analysis right after, if that's cool with you.
sounds good. Yeah.
Me coming at this from my hotel room, still in Kansas, so we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right, ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always with my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another edition of Flyover Footy's Fallout. Coming at you after an exciting SKC St. Louis City Derby match, 3-3 draw out in Kansas. Santi, you were calling the game. How are you doing on this day after as we're recording? And how do you feel about this match?
Doing great, Matt. Just got back to St. Louis around 2 in the morning, but just excited about talking about this game. It was a great game to call, very exciting. A little bit of a heartbreak if it had not been for that last minute goal from Thomas Totland, but obviously the excitement in that play was great, and just seeing the fans, how well they travel, and I could hear the fans loud and clear, even though I had my headphones. That was great. That was great to hear.
As I understand it, a lot of things were heard loud and clear on the broadcast. At least it
I
was
heard, yeah.
it made for some interesting conversation post game, that's for sure. But before we get into all this, Santi, let's start like we always do, kicking off with the starting 11. And it played out exactly as we thought it was, quite literally exactly. Roman Berkey, Anthony Marcanic, Kyle Hebert, Tim Parker, Thomas Totland, Chris Durkin, Tomas Ostrak, Celio Pompeu, Indiana Vasilev, Rasmus Alm, and Klauss. It was the 4-2-3-1 that we picked. It was the 4-2-3-1 we saw, and it was for the second time, I believe, this season already. St. Louis City ran out with the same lineup in back-to-back games. Was this everything you expected and thought it would be?
Yeah. I really wanted to have the same lineup as last game. Obviously, and we were talking on our DMs that Carnell, even though it's a great lineup, he may throw a wrench or two, but no, he went with the same guys, and that was great to see. And the team started the game really well.
Yeah, so knowing that we had no Sam, knowing no Leuven, Yarrow, and Blom, they're all recovering from injuries. Those three. This was, and Nielsen hasn't yet worked his way back up to, I think, fitness, or you're taking his time with the rib. Nothing else going on with Joachim Nielsen, so putting that to bed. But Santi, as we look at this, given the injuries to Leuven, and presumably he'll slot back in easily. Nielsen the same way. Right now, with the fitness that we have, is this the unequivocal best starting 11 that St. Louis has?
Yeah, I will say yes. With considering the injuries and the guys that are not with the team, yes, this is my best 11 for sure.
So back-to-back games, this seems like something that Carnell is getting into a groove with. And in addition to how the team has been playing creatively, Carnell said post-game that this was a match that was kind of designed to be physical. He said, quote, I mean, it's a derby, right? We get up for these moments. There's a lot on the line. There's a lot that's happened here over 12 months. So for us, it was a natural reaction to want to and believe that we can. We knew we were good coming into this game, and we showed it for many parts during this game. This starting 11 created, again, so many chances that we have become accustomed to them doing. Now, there were defensive lapses that we'll get to, but I think overall, this starting 11 has really coalesced around each other, and every single person in here, from Durkin and Ostrak in the midfield on up to Indy in the attacking mid, and even now Klauss, they're all finding their rhythm, and it was good to see happen. Unlike what we usually do, Santi, though, let's just get straight into the goals, because we have 6 goals to talk about, and we're not going to be here all day for this podcast. So let's break it down. And one note before we get into the goals and the game flow though is I found it interesting to watch. This was the first game with the new rules being applied, right? So you had time substitutions, you had the on-field treatment rule, and you had the VAR in-stadium announcements. Now we didn't get any of those VAR in-stadium announcements in this match, so we didn't really get to see that play out. But I thought it was interesting in how these other rules were applied because at least twice in the game I saw it was notable in how the refs handled it. One was at the 37-minute mark with Danny Rosero when he went down, and unbeknownst to those in the stadium, he went down for an extended period of time. The medical crew came out, and he was only required to step off for a moment before being allowed back on the field. Now, I understand the broadcast, and you probably saw this too. They said it was a head injury, and that's why this occurred. So we didn't, and that's one of the exceptions, right?
Yeah, that's one of the exceptions, and yeah, that's what I saw. Because he got a ball to his face. So yeah, I think the judgment call there is that it could be a head injury. So that's what I thought. Yeah, it won't be applied here. My Hector was saying the same. He was like, "Hey, why are they not applying the rule?" And I said, "Well, probably because they consider this a head injury." But I think it's gonna take some time. I think it's gonna take some time for the refs to adjust. This was the first week, and
Mm-hmm.
there will be a lot of back and forth in the next few weeks on that. Like, why wasn't it applied this time? But I think over time we will see more consistency on that.
And Indiana Vassilev was the only other notable thing to me where he, at one point in the game, looked like he had taken a knock and was limping around pretty hard, struggling to get back. And I couldn't quite tell if he was just fighting through it and would get subbed off soon, or if the ref was allowing him a little bit of leeway to get back in the game before calling for the med staff. But that it did seem like there's the referees are trying to work with the players to make sure that they're given a little bit of that leeway before calling out the med staff. Whereas before, maybe they would have called them out initially. So even in that regard, you're seeing time being saved when the med staff isn't immediately being called on, and when they are, presumably you'll have that couple minutes where the player goes off. But overall, I mean, this didn't really impact the game positively or negatively. I mean, you could argue positively and that it might have saved some med staff time, but we'll probably get to see more of this in the coming months for sure. So you ready to dig into these goals?
Yeah, yeah, that's the exciting part. Let's do it.
Yeah, and this game had a lot of momentum swings, mostly City's ways. If you look at the charts, the momentum really is sticking with St. Louis City for a majority of the game. You had spikes for Sporting in their transition, in their counters as they move the ball up the field quickly. But overall, when it comes to the possession numbers that we'll talk about later, skewing to SKC, the danger came from St. Louis. However, it was Sporting that got off on the right foot early. Alan Polito at 17 minutes from Willie Agata. This one started with a Tim Parker pass high and right to Thomas Totland that was intercepted by Tim Leopold, the Sporting left back. Leopold played the ball kind of a give and go with Daniel Shallowy in the left in transition, and then Leopold played it to Alan Polito centrally in stride. You have Tim Parker, Kyle Hebert, and Anthony Marcanic all back. Tomas Ostrak is chasing in the middle, and the key to this play came when Alan Polito played it to Willie Agata on his right, and Polito keeps going, but that was enough to pull Ostrak and Marcanic to Agata. And unfortunately for City, Kyle Hebert makes one step towards Willie Agata, and that was enough to give Alan Polito space, finding that open space between Hebert and Parker. And once Willie Agata found Alan Polito on that final pass, Polito had an open pass to goal, scored it, and from about 8 yards out, gave SKC the lead 1-0.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate play, and St. Louis was doing things very well until that moment. But it's one of those quick transitions, and St. Louis started the game playing so high and trying to find options, and unfortunately, Sporting KC intercepted the pass, and they executed that transition really well. And when you give a space to a guy like Alan Pulido, he scores, he catches on those, and again, Alan Pulido scoring against St. Louis. He didn't score in the playoffs, but he
Mm-hmm.
scored last year at Children's Mercy Park. He had a brace.
A brace, exactly. And this was kind of a quintessential SKC goal where they're using the small amount of space to play the ball in these short passes, drawing defenders to them, and then playing the ball off of them. It was executed really well, but as we talked about on last week's flyover. This is a Sporting team who has not handled the lead well. This now makes 3 straight games where they've dropped points from winning positions. And to the benefit of St. Louis, they fought back. St. Louis lost their own lead, so we're not absolving St. Louis for losing a lead here, but it's definitely a trending topic for SKC. They played the ball really well in those moments, and they executed their counterattack very well, opening space from us. But this wasn't a St. Louis City team that fell back, that was out of sorts from themselves, that tried to do too much even. Because for a good amount of time there, after St. Louis went down, they were threatening. And in fact, there was an entire sequence of time before the 31-minute goal from Klauss where St. Louis was threatening that included a 29-minute Tim Parker long pass where Klauss himself almost had a goal before he ended up having a goal, keeping it in possession himself, playing the ball at his feet, and actually somehow beating all of Kansas City's back line, getting in behind their center backs and earning himself a corner. And it was from this corner that St. Louis eventually scored. So 31 minutes. This one comes from Klauss, receiving it from Chris Durkin and Rasmus Alm. After that corner that Klauss himself won, St. Louis kept possession in the attacking half for, I counted, over a minute on replay, eventually leading to Tim Parker heading the ball, who was in our attacking half, heading the ball down the right wing to Chris Durkin. Durkin chased it down and won the ball against 2 defenders. That was a masterful positioning move by Chris Durkin to win this ball. And when he won it, he passed it through back to Rasmus Alm, and Rasmus Alm ends up with the ball on the right wing, and you can see the vision as you watch the replay. But if you get a chance to watch this replay again, watch Rasmus Alm on this, because it is clear in the moment that he's looking for Salio on this run. And when he passes the ball in behind the back line, and Salio doesn't run for the ball, and Alm realizes it, he is throwing his hands up, asking Salio to continue his run until he sees Klauss out of nowhere, back post, coming towards the middle, screaming to scoop it up behind the KC back line and finish it, which is enough to give everybody that overjoyed feeling. Klauss ties it up 1-1. What'd you make of this play?
It was a great play, and that's exhibit one of how physical St. Louis was in this game. Chris Durkin winning that ball. During the broadcast, I even, before he recorded the ball, I was like, oh, he's not gonna get there, and oh, he got there, and he recovers the ball and he passes it to Rasmus Alm. So it was a showing of how physical St. Louis was. Chris Durkin had a great game. We're getting used to him being so physical and being so good on the defensive side, and this time recovering a ball to start a transition for St. Louis. So it was a great play, and Klauss, he's on fire. Second game scoring in a row, his third goal of the year. And a couple of weeks ago, we were all talking, oh, Klauss, he's not scoring. He hasn't found his groove, and he found it last night, and he participated on all the goals.
Every goal Klauss had a hand in, or a foot in, and it didn't stop the momentum from St. Louis. So they built off what they had on this first goal. SKC had a couple threatening moments, but no real threatening shot opportunities, and so that leads into stoppage time, where Sporting was setting up in possession in their attacking half at 45 plus 3 or so. Sporting played it from their back line to their right side. They were trying to get it between the lines, playing it from their back line to their front line. And with that long pass on the ground, it was intercepted by Anthony Markanek. Markanek played it centrally to Chris Durkin. And as soon as Durkin received it, Rasmus Alm made this huge run past Klauss, angling towards the right wing. And this is where the ball gets sent over the top. Rasmus Alm goes to recover it against a couple players, getting tangled up. And before he can secure it, he goes down. And it was enough time for Sporting to gather it, clear it on the ground back to Willie Agata, who had come back so deep for the ball. And then this is where probably the moment of the game, the highlight, the non-goal highlight, let's say that, the non-goal highlight of the game happened, where Willie Agata gets the ball, and he doesn't have a good touch on this. So let's be clear that this ball was not well played by Willie Agata. He had 2 hard touches, both coming back towards his own goal. And on that second touch, it was enough for Klauss to come in and shoulder tackle him into the Nebraska Furniture parking lot. I mean, the city refs had a nice gift.
Oh, I love that.
after the game where just Willie Agata might still be going at this point on Sunday as we record this. He flew, and Klauss did a magnificent job of playing the ball in that moment where Agata did not have good possession of it. He had let the ball get beyond himself, and so Klauss steps in and immediately takes the ball to go forward. There's a charge, I think, by some SKC media that Klauss wasn't playing the ball. But if you look at the replay and you slow it down, Willie Agata barely had possession of the ball himself at that point. He had let so much space gather between himself and the ball that Klauss shoulder tackled him in the perfect opportunity. And you even had people on MLS wrap up afterwards. I think it was 3-1 of the analysts saying that it was not a foul. And yeah, Jerry Hayes in our chat on our live stream saying Taylor Twellman on the broadcast said Willie had possession, therefore it's a foul. That was the worst kind of possession you could possibly have if you're going to call that. I don't doubt that he had technical possession of it because nobody else was near it, but the touches on the ball were so poor.
Hmm.
He allowed so much space to gather. All that said, eventually, Klauss gets the ball and then makes magic happen. Klauss takes the ball, dribbles it over from the right channel or from the right channel on City over to the left near wing, lays it off for Celio Pompeu, and then Klauss still does work after the pass. He's still drawing defenders around it. And then as Klauss draws defenders away, Celio has enough space created, cuts over to the right, and then hits a worldie of a goal from about 20 plus yards out to give St. Louis the lead going into half. I mean, what more can we say about this play? But how did you see it on the broadcast?
A golazo by Celio, and Klaus doing all the work. Not only he recovers that ball with that tackle, and just want to say all those goals are reviewed in VAR, so the refs still had a chance. At least the video assistant referees had a chance to look at the play and assess if it was a foul or not. And as you said, to me it looked good, but just Klaus after that, just not only passing it to Celio, but he continues his run and draws defenders. And he was actually, I also noticed he was signaling to Celio, like kind of to continue to draw defenders. And then Celio with a space and just outside the box going for that shot. And I was happy about that because a lot of times we want to continue the play and go into the box. And even though there is a
Mhm.
space, the team doesn't go for the shot from outside the box. But a great shot by Celio, and he was like, "Hey, Klaus, now you have 3 goals. I'm also gonna score my third goal of the season. So here you go. What a golazo! I called it a zapatazo in the broadcast. So that was great to see and great to call.
The anything you can do, I can do better game that Celio and Klaus have going on is tremendous. And yeah, let's be clear on the shoulder tackle. In the moment, I could see it being called either way. It was a hard tackle. So before you even got to that moment where Klaus was playing off Celio and Celio had the space, that I don't blame anybody for any initial reaction, even afterwards. I mean, probably the hardest no call tackle that you might see. And your point about those being reviewed as part of the lead up to the goal, I mean, that's what the technology is for, and that happens behind the scenes. It's not an overt review, but it's being looked at to make sure that there's nothing in the lead up to the goal. So all of that seems on the up and up to me, and I'll leave it to Klauss with his quote after the game saying maybe a lot of people will argue that it was a foul, but I think it's just like a normal duel for me. We're like running to each other, and I think it's just like a normal duel. Yeah, I'm happy that I beat him because then I was able to find Celio, and then Celio, unbelievable. And Santi, before we go into the second half and what all happened in the back half of the game, how much does it benefit St. Louis that you have players like Klaus and Celio, or even Alm and Totland on the other side, who have this linguistic familiarity? It's languages, it's styles, and it's these specific matchups that work well in specific parts of the field. How big of a benefit is that to St. Louis City?
It's a great benefit, and you saw it on that goal, the connection between Celio and Klaus. That Klaus makes a run and makes some movements with his hands to show
Mhm.
Celio like what he should be doing while he runs behind him. It's great to see those connections, and if you think about it, Klaus and Celio have been playing together almost for 2 years, because Klaus came in July
Yep.
2022 to play for City 2. And yeah, he didn't play a lot of games, but they train together every day. And they are both from Brazil. They sometimes you catch them speaking Portuguese in training. So they had a great connection. And that familiarity within players, between players, is definitely really important. And we saw that last night. So yeah, you can see that chemistry, and it pays off on the field when they are playing together, and you see players that um, have those connections. In Spanish, we call it pequeñas sociedades, like small societies, small groups. And when you have things like that in a team, it's helpful, because players know each other so well.
Yeah, and this is undoubtedly one of those things that Bradley Carnell looks to when he crafts a lineup and sees who might play well together is looking at this level, getting underneath the layer of who's in form and looking at these kind of underlying, not even metrics, just underlying facts and the intangibles of how each player can play off of each other. First half, St. Louis was in the sweet spot of 46% possession. They led in shots, they led in passes in the opposition half, and they had the momentum. I mean, the biggest momentum swings happened at the end of the first half, and they were in St. Louis's direction. But in the second half, it really seemed like Sporting came out with more possession oriented momentum, where it wasn't necessarily threatening as much, but they took the wind kind of out of St. Louis in how they were mitigating the press. St. Louis seemed like I don't know if I'd say they took their gas pedal off or they let up on the gas, but they definitely had less of a high press that was working, I think, and KC was able to maneuver the ball around. If you look at the momentum swings in the second half, there were smaller spikes from both sides across the board, whereas St. Louis had much more of the momentum building in the first half. And so, as Sporting looks to try and beat St. Louis down and work with these short passes, St. Louis is trying to. I took St. Louis's second half as trying to shore up those in between the lines. Like, you don't want to allow the type of goal that you did in the first half, and so that's what you're doing defensively. You're correcting for the mistake that you made in the first half, and so that's what I see St. Louis came out as in the second half, which led to about 64, 65 minutes where St. Louis made their first tactical substitutions. This seemed like for like to me. This bringing in Jose Kojima and AZ Jackson for Tomas Ostrak and Indina Vasilev, they plugged right into their same positions. Kojima in the midfield and AZ up top in the attacking central mid. You have fresh legs. You're ready to go. You're ready to pick up where these players are leaving off, who had given it their all. And then as you sub them out on the set piece, free kick, Johnny Russell sends it from the right over the line, slightly headed by Klauss. So we got a piece of it. But unfortunately, Klauss really seemed like one of the last men back, because after Klauss tipped it, it fell to Daniel Shallowy. Shallowy was in behind, and he gave it a shot that went off of Berkey's hands. It was a really high shot. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know what the trajectory would have been without Berkey touching it, but Berkey he stopped the shot, but unfortunately went right behind him and kind of fell into the back corner of the net. Unfortunately, where Kojima was, but he was positioning himself to go more back post and ended up on the wrong side of the post to be able to help. And then at the end of the day, they didn't even give the goal to Daniel Shallowy. It's showing as an own goal now to Roman Berkey.
I know that's very important, and I was telling Hector in the broadcast. I was like, oh my god, I never thought we were gonna have an own goal by Berkey that before we had a few his first assist on a goal, or a few assists. But yeah, unfortunate. And to me, and looking at the video, it doesn't look like that was gonna be a shot on goal. But it's a fraction of seconds, and Berkey was trying to make a play, and unfortunately it went that direction. And yeah, Kijima was there, but it would have been an own goal by Kijima if he had tried to do anything. Just one of those plays. But I wanted to comment about the beginning of the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we talk about the physicality on the first half and on the goals, and I saw some comments and people saying, "Oh, St. Louis wasn't that physical. Maybe they let off the gas." But I think Sporting KC, there were a couple of plays early on the second half where they tried to be physical too. So they were trying to match that too. So I don't think it was much of St. Louis letting off the gas and not be physical. It was that Sporting KC was trying to match that too.
That's a fair thought, and that's what they needed to do in their tactical sub and their or their tactical adjustments in the second half, rather, because I don't even think, if I'm looking back on this, that Sporting KC had any subs made. Or they had one sub that was Johnny Russell at the beginning of the second half, which actually, now that I think about it, played into some of those tactical adjustments that they made, because that widened their field and it gave them more of a 4-3-3 shape when Russell came on. So that probably played into how St. Louis was managing it. So if you look at what St. Louis was doing, you have to take into consideration that sub that Johnny Russell came on
Hmm.
for Willie Agata. And so taking their false nine, and moving their lines more horizontally into a typical 4-3-3, that played into the rest of this game. Now, that second goal by Sporting was a set piece, so it is what it is. But as they played into the rest of the game, and the Eric Tommy goal that would eventually come shortly after that, I think their line changes definitely played into it. But it was unfortunate for St. Louis to have these tactical subs made. You're looking to keep momentum, to have fresh legs, and then the wind's immediately taken out of your sails. A few minutes later, you had 73-minute sub where Nuki Thorson comes in for Rasmus Alm, which isn't anything to read into. It's just Rasmus Alm working his fitness up, right, where he's still getting his fitness from missing the first few games of the season. And the shape that St. Louis went into is fairly interesting here. Nuki Thorson slotted in an underneath role more centrally, pushing AZ to the right. And this was, we don't often see Nuki Thorson, or at least so far this season, we hadn't seen him play centrally. So this was interesting to see happen. What did you think of Thorson and the overall, how St. Louis moved into their shape after he subbed in?
Yeah, I was surprised to see him playing centrally, but I think it was a good adjustment, and
Mhm.
I had not noticed this in previous games, but he's so good on the air, like winning duels. I really like to see that from him, and the third goal started with him winning a duel in the air. But yeah, overall, I like what I saw from him. He keeps getting minutes. We had talked about maybe him getting more minutes just because of the Sam Aaron situation, and he's taking advantage of it and making the best out of it and showing he can be an option on the second half.
So just a few minutes later, after Thor subs in, St. Louis was caught sleeping, and this was the most disappointing goal allowed for me in this game, where Sporting lost their possession a little bit in their defensive third. They regained it, and as soon as they regained it, you saw Klauss press up, you saw AZ press up, and Fountas hit a streaking Eric Tommy over the top, somehow in behind Tim Parker and Kyle Hebert. And Tommy took it himself from there. It was 1v1 on Berkey. But the biggest disappointment for me is just how Tommy was able to get in behind our back line in such a clinical manner, where Fontas regained possession. They beat the press, quote unquote, because they sent it long, and somehow Parker and Hebert were both too high up on the field to catch a streaking Eric Tommy.
Yeah, yeah, and he did a good job putting it outside of Berkey's reach. One thing that I was surprised about, a lot of times Roman Berkey on this plays, he will come out and try to get the ball. You could even see him sometime outside the box, and he will head the ball for a throwing. But I was expecting for him to come out and try to cut the play, or at least try to meet Eric Tommy in the middle. But he just stayed in his line, and Eric Tommy did a great job. But yeah, it was to me a little bit of disappointing how the play developed and how easy it looked for Sporting KC to find Tommy with the space.
After that, St. Louis seemed like they were a little desperate. And so you saw an 88-minute sub after a few sequences where Nicholas Dewar comes in for Anthony Marcanic. And to me, initially, this was clearly a move to get fresh legs in and to improve our attack, to widen our attack with fresh legs, get Dewar higher up on the field. And that was reflected in what Bradley Carnell did with Chris Durkin. With Durkin dropping back a little bit, almost giving St. Louis a three center back look, by using those wingbacks of Dewar and Totland, and then having Durkin drop in between Hebert and Parker. That was a fascinating move that Carnell even alluded to. So before we get into the Totland goal, I'll just say what Carnell's comment after the game was, which is we just had to make a play. We pushed Durkin in as a center back to get the wingers, Dewar and Totland, as wingers to flood the box with Thoresen and Pompeu and Klauss, who did amazing things. So yeah, we just tried to put a bit of pressure on the opponent's back line, and credit to the boys for not giving up. And it's something that this team continues to show, a never say die attitude. And Santi, that never say die attitude happened at 90+2, where there was a goal kick by Tim Melia. Aerial duels, to your point of Nuke v. Thoresen, aerial duels were won by Kyle Hebert, Nuke v. Thoresen, and Anthony Marcanic, all in sequence, that pulled the ball down to give it to Klauss centrally in the City attacking half. Klauss drew defenders in, both from the fullbacks and the center backs, and then space was opened up for days on the right side for Thomas Totland. And as Thomas Totland was streaking to the right, Klauss played it back to AZ, but it was actually Daniel Shallowy who tipped the ball towards Thomas Totland. And then, reminiscent of last week, Totland secured it in stride. This time, he had a nifty move to keep possession over a Tim Leopold attempted tackle or slide tackle. And then Totland takes it the rest of the way to secure a point for City, drawing even at 3-3. Though the fact that this was Totland's first goal is fantastic in and of itself. But when you're now having 2 games in a row where you're able to create the space on the right for Totland to work, and to see Totland be so clinical in what he can do with the ball, either in distribution, creating to Alm Klauss, or just taking it himself. This is another player like Klauss who has rounded into such good form and familiarity with the system that you really feel like just about anything is possible with this guy.
Yeah, just great job by him, and he put it away like if he was a number 9, just very clinical
Yeah.
with the finishing, and it was just a great feeling. One of those games that and Bradley Carnell said it, like we dominated for a great part of the game, and yeah, just a few lapses here and there that resulted in Sporting KC scoring, but it would have been very disappointing to go home with a 3-2 loss after all the great things the team did. But yeah, as Jerry Hayes is saying, never abandon hope, which was on the tifo that the fans put together for this game, and yeah, just great teamwork is great to see, and we have talked about this in previous podcasts. Great to see the team scoring so late in the game to get points. Just not giving up and continue playing as a team, trying to find that equalizer or game winning. And yesterday, that play was a great play by Thomas Totland, and yeah, 1 point, and yeah, it's another draw, but it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling on this version of the derby between Sporting KC and St. Louis.
I think this is the 3rd game we've played now after 9 that we have scored in stoppage time to get a result, which is, I mean, that speaks to the we will never be abandoning hope, despite what their tifos might say, and that this team never gives up in the dying minutes to secure a point. And that's, as we talk about whether we should have taken all 3 or not. I mean, that this is something that has to be said, is that winning in a way in MLS is difficult, and a point on the road is always something that you strive for. I think it was Tim Parker who said it a week or 2 ago in the press conference, that at home you always want to get 3 points, but on the road there are times where you're very happy to pull out a point. You want to get a result, because if you can win at home and draw on the road, you're going to be a top tier elite team in this league. And for St. Louis to have come from behind twice in this game, they gave up the lead once. Yeah, that can't go overlooked. But they came from losing positions twice to secure this point. And the way they did it overall, so we talked about the goals, but if you look at the passing network in this, it's pretty reminiscent from last week, in the sense that a lot of the volume of passing goes through the left side of our field. Anthony Marcanic is so heavily involved in the passing attack for St. Louis City. And in fact, it touches for this game, SKC obviously out-touched St. Louis. They outpassed them 375 to 231. But St. Louis only had, so it's not surprising that St. Louis had 1 player in the top 8 of overall touches. That 1 player, though, was Anthony Marcanic. 4th in this game, tops in St. Louis City with 74 total touches. Next on that list is Chris Durkin, who was ninth overall with 59, and Klauss with 54. So you can see how the passing network would be so heavily skewed from Anthony Markanek to Chris Durkin. Even Tomas Ostrak and Kyle Hebert over there on that left side were getting into it. What ended up happening was more of an outstretching on the right side where you're seeing a lot more transition work. You're seeing a lot more stretching the field from Thomas Totland and Rasmus Alm. And then you have this possession type offense in the middle third of the field on the left side. It balances itself out fairly well, and it does create a whole lot of opportunity and open space on the right that you saw players like Indiana Vasilev, Rasmus Alm, and others in their expected threats over there on that right side, and what opening up the field on the left can do.
Yeah, no, the team is doing a great job opening the field, and it's great to see Anthony Markanik just continue doing well, getting significant minutes. We thought this was going to be a competition between him and Nicolas Deur. Obviously, Nicolas Deur at the beginning of the season wasn't there fitness wise, but Anthony Markanik cementing himself into that left back role, and just the number of touches he had shows how important he is for the way the team plays, and yeah, that also opens up space on the other side for Thomas Totland to do what he's best at.
And Markanek and Tallinn have created the wide attack that St. Louis City has craved so desperately. Passes in the final third and into the final third were coming from the wings so heavily. You had 41% of passes coming from the left, 43% of passes coming from the right once you were in the final third. So you're having these players stretch the field and use that space that they're creating to find players like Klauss and allow him to play it off to Rasmus Alm and Saliu Pompeu. The amount of chances that were created in this game, just like last week and the week before against FC Dallas and Austin FC, was pretty remarkable. And it led to St. Louis leading in every single shot category. 19-8 in overall shots, 8-2 in shots off target, 7-4 in shots on target, 4-2 in block shots, 10-3 shots inside the box, and 9-5 in shots outside. We're balancing this so well, which also speaks to the ability of St. Louis to put pressure from any zone of the attacking third. And that's dangerous because it pulls the defense out of position and prevents the defense from really falling back into more of that low block. If you're proving that you can score a goal from outside the box from what Salio did, then you're going to make the defense respect you and pull you out a little bit. So the more times St. Louis is successful in these speculative shots or these shots from outside the box or playing the ball in from out wide, the more teams are going to be saying that and see this isn't just something that St. Louis is doing and we can fall back because there's such low percentage chances or they're not successful, but we actually have to respect that. And that's what St. Louis ended up doing multiple times. And it's really indicative of how well our attacking mids are gelling together. You had all three of the starting St. Louis attacking mids, Rasmus Alm, Indiana Vasilev, and Saliu Pompeu, lead the game in expected assists. They're delivering service to Klauss and they're receiving it from. They're playing so well. This attacking crew of St. Louis, and that's not even including the fullbacks and how they're playing. But this group is clicking so well in what they're doing metrics wise, what the positioning is showing in the passing network, in where they're pressing, that offensively, it could be argued that this St. Louis City team is in the best form of their existence.
Yes, and maybe the points on the table don't show that. People could continue making comparisons between what last year's team and this year's team have done so far through 9 games. If you think about it, last year St. Louis had 19 points through 9 games. This year, 12 points, and yeah, it's right now mid-table, but I think it has picked up the pace in the last 3 games, two draws and a win against Austin. But if you look at the table, everybody is so close together,
Mhm.
and getting points on the road, it's important. And the other thing to note is that now the team goes in on a bye week, and it's gonna have some time for some of the injured players to recover, have more options, and another game on the road when the team comes back. But Yeah, I agree with you. If I have to compare 2024 team versus 2023 team, I think this is a better team and is more dangerous, has more ways to attack and create chances. So I like this version of St. Louis 2024.
Santi, I'm going to give my four players of the match. You tell me if they match yours, and then you give me your opinion after this, after I read through some of these stats about which of these players you think are going to be making the MLS Team of the Match Day, because we will have representation. I think that's easy to say. I'm going to start off with Thomas Totland. He recorded his first goal for St. Louis, and it was his third goal contribution of the season. He's got 1 goal and 2 assists on the year. Klauss had his second consecutive goal, giving him 3 this season, and he picked up his first assist as well. This game, in fact, marked the second time that Klauss has recorded a goal and an assist in the same match for City, the other being last year's 4-0 win against Real Salt Lake. Rasmus Alm picked up his second assist of the season for the second consecutive week, assisting on a Klauss goal. This is the stat that we loved last year. St. Louis City is 14-7-7 all time with Rasmus Alm on the field and 8-3-3 when he starts. This is a team that looks different, plays different, and succeeds differently when Rasmus Alm is on the field. Celio Pompeu is my other player, obviously scoring his third goal of the season. He's now scored in the last 2 matches at Children's Mercy after tallying that lone goal that City had in the away leg of the playoffs. And for me, I think I think at least two of these players are going to find themselves on the team of the match day. I'm going to go with Klauss and Thomas Totland because I think a defender who scores a goal has a much likelier chance to be on that team of the match day. But what do you think?
Yeah. So fans chose Thomas Totland as
Mm-hmm.
the man of the match, but
Yes.
my man of the match was Klaus, just because he scored, he assisted, he was involved on the other goal. So yeah, I will give that to Yao Klaus, and yeah, he has to be on the team of the week, just because of all the work he did, and as you mentioned, when there are goals and assists involved. More chances that you make it to the team of the match. I wouldn't be surprised, and I haven't looked overall at how our players
Mm-hmm.
did, although I'm just thinking now about one who is actually a Colombian. So I was going to say that maybe Klaus will be the player of the match day, but no, I don't think he will. I think
Yeah.
Chicho Arango may take that one, or maybe someone else. But no, he has to make it. Thomas Totland, I think, will make it too, just because defender scoring a goal, and that's a great reward for him. And I don't think anyone else will make it, but as you mentioned, Rasmus Alm with his picking an assist, and with that stat that you mentioned, when he's on the field, the team does so well. And yeah, Chris Dorkin
Yes.
is one of those players that goes under the radar, but he's so important for St. Louis. I was looking at a stat earlier this week, before yesterday. He was second in the league on duels won,
Ooh,
and that shows how important he is for the team.
big time. Chris Durkin has played himself into a vital role for St. Louis that he's not going to let go of when Jabulu Blom returns from health. Santi, we got to get out of here pretty soon. I'll give my biggest takeaways. You tell me what you saw going out of this one. I love that our attacking four continues to create chances. All four in very good form. Our fullbacks, along with them, we're progressing the ball so well. On our left, like I mentioned, we're leveraging possession. We're opening space to our right. All three goals came from work that was done in space on the right side in our attacking third. So we're just gelling so well with Rasmus Alm up there. Midfielders are working so well in connecting our lines. You have Tomas Ostrak and Chris Durkin again, like you said, doing fantastic work in putting these together. I love where we're going into this bye week. I think the wins will come, but we're playing well enough that losses are being turned into draws.
Yeah, and just going into the bye week, after a game like this, where you dominated for a long time, and yeah, you didn't get the win, but at least you didn't lose, and you go on a high note to the bye week. I think that's important for the team, and also just psychologically, just not losing to Sporting KC after losing the last two, if you count the playoffs. I think it's also important. First time the team
That's right.
gets points at Children's Mercy Park. So I think the team is going on a high note, and just time to rest. Maybe for some of the guys who are banked up to recover. We didn't talk about Joachim Nilsson, but he didn't have to play yesterday, which to me is great because it's just more time. He will have to recover, less risk of maybe that injury aggravating. So maybe we'll see him more in a couple of weeks when the team returns and plays Houston at Houston. So no, if we have to think about what the team did before the bye week, I I would give it a high rate, and yeah, the points will come, the wins will come. But yeah, I'm satisfied with what I have seen so far, and every game the team has gotten better and has shown that it can create chances in a different way. It's to me, it's just like a different way of doing things, and eventually that will continue, and the team will start getting 3 points.
This is a more 3 or 4 dimensional team than we saw last year. Absolutely. That's perfect. Santi, like you mentioned, St. Louis has played their final game in April. They're heading into an off week going forward. St. Louis moves into 2-1-6 on the season with 12 points, sitting eighth in the West. Now tied their draw total from all of last season with 6. So that's an interesting facet. In general, they are just 4 points off the lead in the West, 3 points off of second place. So they're sitting in good in that congested West. They're now 2 spots ahead of Sporting, who is 10th on 11 points. St. Louis's next match will be May 4th when they travel to Houston. Their next home match at City Park will be May 11th when they welcome the Chicago Fire. Santi, that's all the time that we have for it this week. Thanks everybody for joining us on another edition of Flyover Footy's Fallout. You have any last words going into this bye week?
Last year, didn't we tie 5 games last year?
Did we?
Yeah. So now
Now we
we
have
have,
more.
yeah, now we have
Good correction, because I missed
now
out.
we have more than last year, and a lot of games is still to be played. So as
Right,
I
yeah.
said, different way of doing things. These draws also count, and yeah, it's a different version of the team, but it's 3 4 dimensions as you mentioned, and that's important too.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody, on Flyover Footy. Thanks for being a part of the live stream. And if you're listening to us on podcast, thank you so much for downloading. We really appreciate it. We'll be back later on this week, regardless of a game. So we'll have plenty more to talk about. Stay tuned to the Flyover Footy podcast stream for more, and we will talk to you later.
Vamos City.